Alright, welcome party people. This is Pencilquest, the gameplay introduction video. It's going to be a much shorter one than Pencil Villages was because there's not a lot to say to get you in the game, which is great. You can get started quickly. So let's run through the basics really quickly. Here I have a pre-prepared party sheet. So at the top here we just have reference information. That's useful when you're playing and you need to look something up quickly. Hopefully you can read the rulebook once and then not have to look at it again, except for the story stuff. So let's have a look at this dude, right? I'll show you this dude, yeah. So we've got a rogue here. He's one of the 4 members of our party. So that's the symbol that we draw in the game when the rogue is around. That's his symbol. And we've equipped 2 abilities to him, right? We'll talk about what that means in a sec. He has 2 nerve. Nerve is a power resource that you can use to do advanced stuff. And he has 4 Vim. Vim is kind of like a combination of health and mana. If it goes to 0, the rogue dies, but some of his abilities will also spend Vim, especially powerful abilities. Some more circles there. Okay, so let's talk about these abilities and where we got them from. This is the rogue's reference sheet in the manual. So it lists all of the abilities that he has in the game. You start the game with only 5 abilities unlocked. So for the rogue, that means stab, longbow, weave, focus, fury, sorry. So this is the default recommended setup party that I've suggested, but really you can use any of the unlocked abilities. Why did we choose 2 abilities? If you have a look at this table here, it tells you that based on how many heroes you're using, you use a certain number of abilities per hero. So since we're using 4 heroes, we're going to use 2 abilities per hero. If you were using a 3-hero party, each hero would have more abilities, and you'd actually have 1 more ability overall. And this is the Noble versus Meek, but we're going to be playing Noble. Noble's the recommended difficulty. Meek is just an easy option if you struggle with the Noble difficulty. So we're going with a 4-hero party. So each hero has 4 Vim. As you can see, we've got 4 Vim, except for the priest. And 2 nerve. Each hero has 2 nerve. And 2 abilities. And that's why we're using 2 abilities per hero. But the point here is that this changes based on the number of heroes and the difficulty level you select. So just use this table. If you want to run a dungeon with 3 heroes, bear in mind that you get more Vim, more nerve, and more abilities per hero. Cool. So, what do these abilities do? I'm not going to try and explain the entire shorthand notation system. You can read that page in the manual. It's really not long. It's 2 pages. But I will explain these 2 abilities so that you can understand how I use them in combat in a second. Okay, so this one, the stuff on the left is the cost, right? So this ability costs this ability costs this. The hyphen represents no cost, so he can use this as much as he wants. If we check this out, by the way, this ability is actually called Stab. So this is just him doing a good old shank in the back. The A means it's an attack, so it's something he uses on enemies to hurt them, as opposed to H, which is help, which is something you use on allies to help them. 1 target, melee range, so he has to be next to them and he can only target 1 thing. Pretty straightforward. Hit means it does 1 damage. It removes 1 Vim if it hits. That's... if you followed all of that, you should be good. It's a pretty straightforward ability. His other one here is actually longbow, right? So it costs a Vim, and the difference here is that it's ranged and it's at advantage. So almost the same ability, but he has to spend 1 of his Vim to use it. So we're gonna have to erase 1 of these Vim as he uses it. It's ranged, which means instead of having to be next to the enemy, he can be up to 3 tiles away, which is useful if you need to take out a high priority target from a distance. And A means advantage. So it's pretty much the same general trope. Won't name names here, but you've heard the word advantage before. So if you want yeah, this should be good. Excuse me while I modify this. Okay, and we're missing the caster boy. Okay, so say we have our rogue here. I have drawn his symbol inexpertly, her symbol, sorry. And the rogue wanted to hit this monster. These aren't monsters, by the way. Monsters are represented by either a number or a letter. So the V here stands for vampire, as you can see up here. And this is the reference for how the vampire works. And then the numbered letters don't get a reference because they're so extremely simple. So if our friend the rogue wants to shank the monster, all the rogue has to do is follow the description of whichever abilities she's using. So if she was using this one, the top one, it would be an attack against a single unit at melee range, so a nearby, an adjacent unit, and it would do 1 vim damage. So the adjacency is satisfied, she's right next to it, and the single target, okay, she would only attack this one, and then to hit it in this game, all you have to do is roll above their number. It's called a rating. So for her to hit this one, she would roll, or you would roll for her. 6 is above 1, right? So only in the case that you roll a 1 do you not hit the monster, right? It's very easy to hit. 5 out of 6 times you're going to hit it. If she was attacking the 2, then you'd have to roll above a 2, so you'd have a 4 out of 6 chance to hit that. Does that make sense? And then where advantage comes in, because remember we saw the longbow has both range and advantage. So let's say the rogue's standing over here and she wants to shoot this 2 with a longbow. Normally, when you attack, you roll a single die, and that's cool. But with advantage, you just roll 2, and you take the better value. So say you got you can ignore the bad roll and use the good roll. Right? Pretty intuitive. Disadvantage works the same, and it works how you would expect. You roll 2 dice and you use the worst roll. So you would have to throw that away, you'd get that. That isn't above 2 if she was using a ranged attack with disadvantage, and she was attacking that 2. That wouldn't be above 2, so that would be a miss. So that's attacking advantage and disadvantage. I said I wasn't going to explain all of this. I guess I just explained a lot of it. Okay, the other thing I should explain here is how monsters work. When monsters attack, they just deal their rating to the nearest hero. It's incredibly simple. So they go in order from most powerful to least powerful. So the vampire would roll on his table up here. I'm not going to do it now because I want to play through a whole combat and show you how it works. So I'll do that in a sec. So the vampire would roll on his table, and then some cool effect would happen. Then you're still going from most powerful to least powerful. So then the 2 would go, and the 2 would target the nearest hero. So the warrior is the nearest hero. If we look at the warrior's passive over here, all attacks against the warrior, just 100% of attacks get reduced by 1. Hit damage against the warrior. It doesn't apply to things like bleed. So that's super powerful. So this 2 would just automatically deal 2 damage to the warrior, but because the warrior is a warrior, the 2 would get reduced by 1, so it would be 1. And then we would erase 1 vim, right? And then the 1 would attack the nearest hero, who is our friend the rogue. And the rogue has no magical mitigation, but her cool ability is that she counts as 1 tile further away for both target selection and aggression. So when this monster is trying to decide who's closest, it's actually a tie between the rogue and the warrior and the mage, because the rogue counts as 1 tile further away than she actually is. So this monster would have a tie between these 3 targets because they're equidistant. And when that happens, you, the player, gets to choose who the monster will go for, which is super convenient. So we'll say we want the monster to go for our warrior, who's the best tank, and because the monster isn't next to the warrior, and this is a melee monster, if the monster had a dot up here, it would be a ranged monster. That's a ranged monster, can attack at range, but there's no such dot, so it's a melee monster. It can't attack the warrior, so it'll just walk closer. So it'll go from here to here. Right? And that's its action. It only gets 1 action on its turn. So it walked a bit closer, and then next turn it'll try to attack. Okay, So we've covered 2 hero attacks. There's a vast variety, which you do need to understand the ability system to grok in detail. And we've covered how monster attacks work against our heroes as well. So I suppose we could... No, we want to cover movement as well. So, excuse me while I reset this. No, that's fine. Anyways, so that's just for context here. So when you start the game, you're going to set up this whole sheet. That's choosing the right number of abilities per hero for however many heroes you're choosing. So this is a 4-hero party, so that's 2 abilities per hero. So you write in the abilities and their costs, and then you write in the nerve and vim that each character has. That's half of the setup you do to start a game. The other half of the setup involves writing in the numbers, right? So this is a filled-in sheet, but this is what you need to do at the start of a game. So there are these little subtext numbers on some tiles. There's a 2 there and a V there and a 1 there. And you just write them in big on the same tile. And that's to say this is where these monsters start. So there's a pack there with a white, there's a pack there with a vampire, there's a pack there with a vampire. There's a whole bunch of packs all over. So when you start a game, you just fill all of those in, and then you don't have to worry about spawning stuff anymore because that's all the monsters you're going to fight on the map. The final thing you spawn in, so to speak, is your party. So let's put our warrior over there, our rogue over there, our priest over there, and our mage over there. So our party is spawned. These are spawn tiles. You can see the little lines, like squarey vibe thing going on. So our party is ready to delve into this dungeon. The other thing that I need to mention, and this one I'm really, honestly, totally not going to go into detail on in this video, is the story. The story is a big part of the awesomeness of this game, and I strongly encourage you to play with the story at least your first game. So to start off, you read the introduction. The vampire lord Vishsarim has been a dread legend passed around for generations, while no one seems to have experienced his malice, and so on. So you read the whole introduction, and then there are these Roman numerals, 1, 2, 3, 4, blah, blah, blah. And you will find points on the map. Like there's a 1, squiggly line there, there's a 2, squiggly line there, there's a 3, squiggly line there, and so on. When you go over a squiggly line, you stop and you grab the story and read the relevant bit of the story. Because it tells you what you're seeing. It describes the space. It makes it delightfully immersive. So that is how the story works, but it is optional. So if you really are just in this for a crunchy tactics game, all of the mechanics that the story tells you about are duplicated up here in like very simplified language. So you might need to check the story for clarification sometimes. But you can play with just these 2 sheets, just the party sheet and the map sheet. And the story is an enrichment that is optional, up to you if you want to use it. Okay, cool. Other stuff I haven't mentioned. There's a whole bunch of terrain stuff, but we're not going to hit any of it. You can look that up and see how it works. Death and replenishment are fairly in-depth, but read the manual, it's not that complicated. Effects are super awesome. We might run into some in this fight, but I doubt it. Basically, buffs and debuffs, as you know from other games, they exist in the world as an object. So a tile will get filled up with speed, and then whenever the trigger happens, somebody takes an action next to that tile, they will get the benefit of speed. In this case, they get an additional action. So there are 10 effects. These are positive, these are negative. Yeah, it's pretty cool because positioning matters, right? You have to dance in and out. If somebody puts a negative effect near you, you can step on it to destroy it or step away from it to avoid it. And often you can force, circumstantially you can force an enemy's negative effect to be used against that enemy, depending on your cunning. And then this is the total party kill counter. When your party all dies 3 times, you lose. You need to restart the map. Okay, I think that is enough information for you to kind of understand what's going on when we start here. I haven't explained all of the hero's abilities, so I'll give you an overview as we use them. Oh, of course. Final thing. Movement. These delightful patterns, like chess, but not. These describe how these heroes can move. So the center tile is where the hero is starting from, and then the dark tiles are their destinations. These are actually blue, but I printed this on a black and white printer. Yeah, so the warrior can do a little hop in the cardinal directions, and then a little diagonal shuffle. The priest kind of moves like a bishop. I'm sure that was intentional. The rogue can move a little bit further, but not really, because these aren't diagonals, so up to 3 tiles in any cardinal direction. And then the mage can like hobble 1 tile or do a little mini blink in a very specific like elongated knight movement, which is quite interesting to play around because you have to line them up. And of course you've got this map, right, with these windy corridors, so you have to use these movement patterns to get these dudes around, which makes positioning a little bit interesting sometimes. Yeah, okay, cool, I'm happy. That is the basics of the game. Now let's start this fight. So we've got a 2 here, a vampire, and a 1. I don't know if I said the vampire is an elite monster, and these are like his minions, like little demon dudes that he has around. And generally the relationship here is that elites buff their minions, so you have this tactical decision of, do you kill the buffing elite, because then the minions will be a lot easier to deal with, or do you kill the minions first because then it has nothing to buff? That makes sense? Okay, cool, let's start. So movement is you draw the dude at the destination and then you erase where they were. So it's all pencil and paper. So for example, to move this warrior forward, move him there, erase him there. The warrior has now moved. And that, I mean, I know they're movement patterns, but that is valid for the warrior's movement pattern. So you gotta check that. So the way you start a fight, we're currently in an explore phase, by the way. So each hero gets 3 actions. Each hero gets 3 actions. So in a party of 4, we've got 12 actions, 3 per hero. We can do anything with these actions. Anything meaning use one of your abilities or move according to your movement pattern. That's all your dudes can do. So if I had wounded at the moment, for example, I could be using these explore actions to heal wounded. And then the pace of the game is it swaps between explore, fight, explore, fight, explore, fight. So every time a new explore phase starts, again, each of your heroes gets 3 actions. You'll mostly be using those actions to position and move toward the next pack of monsters. And then as soon as you step into a fight phase, it switches to each hero takes an action. So action, 4 actions, 1 per hero, in the case of my party of 4. And then each monster involved in the fight takes an action. So action, in this case, because there are 3 monsters. I suppose that probably sounds quite complicated, but I really promise it isn't. And reading the manual will help you get your head around it. But basically, 2 phases, explore and fight, and you just alternate between them. Explore is 3 actions per hero. Fight is 1 action per hero. It is that simple. So the way we leave our explore phase and get into a fight with these dudes is we go close enough to them to piss them off. They're very relaxed monsters, but if we get within 2 range, so it's this line here, if we cross this line, we are going to aggress this pack. Packs can also chain, so if this 2 over here was, say, up here, then these packs would be linked because they are within that same aggression range of each other. But they're not, so they don't in this case. So if we step over this line with any of our heroes, we're going to anger all of these dudes, and they're all going to take an action. So I've used 1 action there to step over there. Let me not confuse the issue and do this a little bit more simply. Okay, so let me start with the rogue. She's going to move up to here. And then the priest is going to move down to here. Yeah, that sounds good. The mage is going to shamble 1, 2, 3 over here, and that's fine because each hero has 3 actions, so 1, 2, 3, that's valid. So the mage will end up down there. Okay, and the warrior will go 1, 2, and that 2 will be the last action of the explore phase, because it angers a monster. Make sense? Cool. So 1, 2. Even though they had other explore actions remaining, they are all forfeit. They're gone now because we're in a fight phase. But don't worry, life is good for the heroes. Sorry, I just need to cut here. And we're back. Yeah, so life is good for the heroes because the game continues to be in their favor. Despite him moving in on the monster's turf, so to speak, the fight phase starts with hero actions again. So now we do all the heroes take an action, all the monsters take an action. All the heroes take an action, all the monsters take an action. Over and over until one side is all dead. But we start with the heroes. So we get to do stuff on the hero's side again. So one by one, I'm going to choose characters to take turns here. So I'm going to start with the warrior. He's going to use an ability that gives him a shield, right? And I'm going to make good decisions. I'm going to put the shield there. So that's a buff. It just sits there and exists in the world. And I'll show you how it works in a second. The rogue is going to be aggressive and move up to here. A little bit dangerous, but she's very spicy. The priest is going to slide on down here so that he is in range of as much as possible. And the mage is going to do a very sad shamble because that's blocked. That's a bit aggressive, I think. Yeah, so the mage is just going to shamble forward a little bit so she can be in range to cast stuff. This is a really tight choke point, so this is a tricky thing of getting everyone through. Okay, so now the heroes have taken all their actions, which were mostly positioning actions. Now the monsters can take their actions. So we'll start with the vampire, and now let's take a look at this table. Just to explain what this means, the vampire, when it engages, behaves as a normal, non-elite monster with a rating of 3. So to hit it, you have to roll above a 3. So it's 4, 5, or 6 to hit it. But also when it attacks, it does 3 damage straight up. When it uses engage to attack, it behaves as a melee monster, so it has to be next to you to do that. So if you just stay out of melee range, it has to walk towards you, and you're safe from engages, so you can kind of kite it to some extent. And this means it has 3 Vim. All non-elite monsters have 2 Vim. So this guy's got 2 Vim, and this guy's got 2 Vim, just by default. Okay, so now it's the vampire's turn, and the vampire's going to roll in his table. As you might have guessed, 1 to 6, this is just a d6 roll. 5, engage. Cool. So the vampire is going to attack. Engage either means move towards your target or attack your target based on whether there's a target in range. Because he's melee and there is a target in range, the vampire is just going to attack the target. Remember that because of her passive, the rogue is actually back here as far as the vampire is concerned, so the only valid target for the vampire is the warrior here. The vampire is going to do a big hit of 3, but remember the warrior's passive reduces all incoming hit damage by 1, so the warrior's only going to take 2 damage. And there that goes. So the warrior has dropped from 4 Vim to 2 Vim. Pretty rough for a first move on the vampire's part. And then the 2 will go. Oh, no, I'm lying to you. Jeez. Everything I just said is true, but when the vampire hits the warrior, the damage in trigger occurs for this shield. Getting your head around these triggers takes a while. Sorry, I should have caught that. I will erase the shield now because it was used up by this event, the vampire hitting the warrior, and the damage that went in is reduced by a further one. So one from the warrior's passive and one from the shield effect that was adjacent to the warrior. So of the 3 vampire damage, only 1 gets through, only 1 Vim is lost, so the warrior's gone from 4 to 3 Vim. Okay, now the 2 attacks the warrior. Again, 1 of those is reduced, the shield's no longer there, so 1 damage will get through from the 2. And the 1 will find the rogue and the priest equidistant. Sorry, the rogue, the priest, and the warrior equidistant. We are going to decide that it wants to target the warrior because that's most convenient for us. Its movement speed is 2, so let's say it goes there, so that it is in a position to attack next turn. Monster movement is just normal tile-based movement, so 1, 2, it can move orthogonally or diagonally, so it goes 1, 2. And now it's in a position to attack the warrior. But that was its 1 action, just moving there, it doesn't actually get to attack. So the monsters have all gone, the vampire engaged, the 2 attacked, and the 1 moved there to attack. And now we're back to the hero turn. Okay, so this is the game. This is really where it gets juicy, because we have 8 abilities here in this setup, and choosing which one to use in which situation is what it comes down to. For example, I have equipped here on my warrior a really nice multi-target ability. It's at disadvantage, but it hits 2 targets, and the warrior has a really juicy double target option here. So this ability hits at disadvantage, so it's really bad at hitting high numbers. But I could probably, or like maybe a little optimistically, get a hit on this 2 and on this 1 from this warrior at the cost of a single Vim. You generally don't want to spend Vim from your tank, but sometimes burning the pack down is worth the risk, right? So let me just do that to show how multi-target attack works. Let's say we're gonna use this ability. So first off, it costs 1 Vim, so the warrior is now on a single point of Vim. And then we're going to target this one first. So you roll per target. So the first target is the one we're rolling to hit 1 at disadvantage. Brilliant. We'll take the worst roll, or the worst die, which is 4, and that is comfortably above a 1, so that does hit. This 1 here is just a tally. When it gets to 2, the monster will be dead because it has 2 Vim. So that is 1 Vim taken off this monster. Yeah, and now we can attack the second one. So we're hoping for no 1s or 2s on either die, which is a lot less likely, but you never know. Yeah, we got a 2. So unfortunately we have to take the worst one because this is a disadvantage, and that means that no hit happens there. But we did do well in getting damage down. And the reason I was really not worried about spending that Vim is because the priest is now going to use a heal. This is a range 2 heal. The normal range for stuff is 3, so the priest has to be quite close to the warrior, but the priest is, so that's fine. It's going to cost the priest a Vim. We can have a look at the priest's passive now. The priest just gets more Vim, because the priest's great. That's how that works. So the priest goes down from 6 to 5 Vim, and the heal heals for 3. So the warrior gets to go back up from 1 to 4. These maxima are hard and fast, by the way. The warrior can't heal above 4, the priest can't heal above 6, the rogue can't heal above 4, etc. But yeah, that cost us 1 Vim off the priest to get the warrior back up from 1 to 4, so that's great. The warrior's taken his turn, the priest's taken his turn. Now, let's go for the rogue. Ooh, no, let's do something spicy with the mage. So the mage has this spell, which hits 1 target at disadvantage, right? So that sounds pretty terrible on paper, so to speak. But you can use it quite cunningly, which I will demonstrate now. things at disadvantage, you still have a really good chance of hitting a 1, right? So the mage is going to use the spell on the 1 here. And you'll see this, the spell has a stun effect. So let's just use the spell quickly. Awesome. No 1s were rolled, so the spell hits. So the spell does do 1 damage. It's a ranged spell, but you can target anyone at range 1, 2, or 3. So the vampire would be a valid target, but so is things that are adjacent. So we did manage to kill that monster, which is great, but it also has a stun effect. So I'm going to draw the stun effect here. So effects target things that are adjacent to them, right? So the awesome upshot of this is that this stun also applies to this monster here. So when the vampire takes its next turn, the stun will apply to it, which is super cool for us because we don't really want the vampire doing stuff. I didn't plan this very well though, because I want to use the rogue as well. I'm anti-retcon, so what I should have done was use the rogue to attack the vampire because I wanted to burn the vampire down and then do this. But now if the rogue activates, the rogue is going to consume the stun. So I'm just going to forfeit the rogue's action. My mistake. So, but that should give you some idea of how these effects interact with things. It gets very messy. Cool. So that is the end of the hero's turn because the mage killed that monster and put a stun down there, and the rogue's going to skip her action. So now the monsters activate. The vampire goes first because it's the most powerful, and we don't need to roll because instead of its roll, which is called a special action that only elites have, it consumes that stun effect and it doesn't do anything. And then the 2 hits the warrior, and the warrior takes 1 damage. And that isn't there anymore, the 1's dead. So we just have a vampire and a 2, which is fantastic. Okay, back to our heroes. I need to do this in the right order this time. What I want to do here is use the rogue's longbow attack. So again, this is a ranged attack. The rogue could use this at a distance. But you might have noticed that the vampire has a summoning ability up here. And I really want to kill the vampire. Sorry, that was out of frame. Summoning ability up here. And I really want to kill the vampire before it can summon more friends, because then it's going to drag the fight out. So the rogue's going to use her longbow attack, and the advantage of that is that it attacks at advantage. Yes, I just said that sentence. Which means we're much more likely to hit the vampire because the vampire has a beefy 3 rating, right? And that means we have to hit 4, 5, or 6. So that's only a 50% chance to hit, but if we use advantage, we bump that up to 75%. So let's start with the rogue attacking the vampire at advantage. Before we do that, the rogue has to spend a Vim, because longbow costs a Vim. Okay, we have a really good chance to hit the vampire here. Yep, we got it. All we needed was one of these to be 4, 5, or 6. So that's 1. The vampire has 3 Vim though, so we still need to get 2 more damage in there. For our warrior, I think I'm going to put up another shield because we really need to be efficient with our priest's Vim. Our priest's Vim. For the mage, why not? Let's do another, I think it's called Ice Bolt or something, on the 2, with the hope of getting a stun down behind these guys. So this is a single target at disadvantage, so we're hoping for no 1s or 2s on either of these dice. Yeah, nice. So we got a damage in on the 2, Vim in, and we've got a stun effect down here, which is going to deprive the vampire of its next activation. The priest, I mean, we're down a Vim, right, on the warrior, a single point of Vim. So we could heal that, but it's going to cost a whole priest Vim, which is kind of more valuable. So I'm actually not going to do that at the moment. And this is risky because like there's the possibility for spikes in this game when you understand all the abilities and how they interact with the monsters. You need to weigh up the chances of those spikes happening against the efficiency gain from letting people dip into the 2 and 1 Vim range and make decisions. Also, it's not game over if somebody dies. You can revive them at a fountain, and it's not game over if the whole party dies, because you have 3 full party wipes before that happens. Yeah, so now the monsters will activate, the vampire will consume this, not do anything. The 2 will hit the warrior. Because the warrior put down a shield and has a passive, neither of those 2 damage gets through, so the warrior remains on 3 Vim. Okay, I think I'm going to stop this video here because I want to keep it short enough to be digestible, but I have covered enough mechanics here for you to get started quickly. You still do need to read the manual. I really strongly encourage it. Try to frame it as a fun thing. I think reading manuals is fun, but I'm weird. Because there are little quirks, especially with the effects system, that are all clarified in the manual. And it'll make your life a lot easier. But yeah, I really hope that helps getting you started. I hope it gives you like the basic flow, because I know intuiting how the flow of a game works from a wall of text is never really intuitive. And I hope you enjoy Pencilquest, because I'm really quite proud of it. Yeah, I think that's about all. If there is something specific you want me to make a gameplay video about, just drop me an email. I'm quite amenable to making shorter videos. They aren't really that hard to do. So yeah, if there's something that's unclear, or there's something that you think a video would really help with, drop me a mail. And drop me a mail anyway, because I like answering emails if you have questions or thoughts or perspectives or whatever. Cool. Thanks for buying and thanks for playing. I really appreciate your patronage, and enjoy Pencilquest. Bye!